Hello, and welcome to the video tutorial for Summer 2017's Solar Warfare Empires. My name is Stephen Carey. I am the game designer, programmer, and artist for Solar Warfare Empires. So this guide is going to be about 15 minutes long, and I really want to stress that it is not going to be a complete guide. I'll touch everything I can, but there's a lot going on in this game, and you'd really be served better by just checking out the rules guide. You can find it in the Solar Warfare 4.2 data file in Dropbox. So to start out, I want to explain how to read the map that you're looking at. So you can see that it's hexagonal, and that dotting it are these planets, Terca Lumerias, Imre, Tenerieth, Zeriath, etc., and these green trade routes. Now, the general rule for reading stuff in Solar Warfare Empires is if you want information, hover over it. So in the case of hovering over a planet, you get to see, first of all, its name, then those 4 numbers, and those numbers are the maximum resource production. So Tenerieth is capable of producing up to 2 silicon, up to 0 iron, up to 1 I completely messed that up. Up to 2 hydrogen, up to 0 iron, up to 1 gold, up to 3 silicon. Alright, just to be clear, that is not what it will actually produce. And we can see there the list of buildings on it. So on Tenerieth, that's a silicon refinery, a hydrogen refinery, and a gold refinery. On Absalom, that's a factory, a hydrogen refinery, and a silicon refinery. All of these planets here, you can see my insignia up there. That is the insignia of the Free Kingdom of Teneris. That is who I am playing as. If we go up here, though, we can see that Draco has a planet here. And if we hover over that, we can see Draco has a hydrogen refinery, an iron refinery, and a space station. Now, these small things which are orbiting around Aetherion are ships. If we move them off, we'll see that they're not so small anymore. And by the way, what I just did there is I just hit Control-Z. Control-Z is basically your best friend. It undoes the last thing you did. But anyway, these are ships, and we can hover over them to get a few information. We've got the insignia of their owner, again, Teneris, me. We've got their name. For most ships, that's just their type, but in the case of a general, who we'll talk about later, it shows their actual name. This is my general, Lazarus Revedon, and he's a pretty chill guy. The 3 numbers you see there just have to do with the ship's capabilities and moving it around. So that's the quick way to get information, but you can get more information if you right-click on a space. And that brings up this area, which I call the detail window. So you'll see first of all that we have the same insignia up here. We can go on Luthier and see that we have Draco's insignia there. You have the same max production information here. You have the same buildings. But now we have a couple other things. So first of all, we have these buttons. If you want to get rid of a building so that you can replace it with something else, you can destroy it. I do not recommend destroying stuff because it doesn't give you anything. Down here, what we have is a list of the available resources. Now you can toggle this between produced and available. Right now, I've only had 1 Empire production, and I haven't bought anything, so they're the same. Okay, now let's talk about the other things that you can actually do on this panel. So the first thing that you can actually do is you can buy stuff. So if we look here, factories produce missiles, and that is the button for producing a missile. So we have the cost displayed there, and if we left-click it, we'll see my production is the same, but my current available resources, I lost 2 hydrogen, I lost 1 of each of these, and I gained a missile. All right. Now, why am I saying available resources down here? All right. So resources are produced by refineries, okay? A silicon refinery produces a silicon at the beginning of each turn, and etc. And when they are produced, they have an actual physical location. I have a silicon, a hydrogen, and a gold that are actually physically at Tenerieth. But you don't really see that, and it's not really important because of these things called trade routes. You can see them lined in green. And what a trade route does is it means that everywhere that is connected by a trade route, okay? You can spend the resources anywhere in that area, anywhere in that area. So, from Absalom, if I wanted to buy another missile, or undo it and buy that missile again, it is drawing resources from all of my connected spaces. Okay. Trade routes are very, very important, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. What I want to talk about now is moving on to conquering planets, and then I can show you another few buttons. So if I take my radar here, and you can select ships just by right-clicking them, either here or here as a matter of fact, and your selected ships show up in blue with that border around them. What I get outlined in blue is the max area where that ship can move. So a radar has 4 spaces of mobility. It can move 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. If I have it move 2 spaces, it has 2 left. All right, and you can hover over to see the max movement. I can also hover over my enemies to see their max movement. So let's go and let's move our radar to Terca Lumerias. And we see a Conqueror Planet button shows up in the detail window. If I click that, Terca Lumerias becomes mine, and I get all these building sites. That just means I can build something there. And the list of things I can build are these 5 buttons here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to construct a space station. You'll see it costs most of my money down there. And let's just go back and let's buy a missile factory. What space stations do is they let you build more ships. So I'm out of money, and you can't see it here because I'm out of money, but usually there are 3 buttons next to the space station indicating the ships you can build. You can build 1 per turn, and they tend to cost a lot. Having a space station at Terca Lumerias is actually really, really valuable for me, because I can be spawning ships that can help me against Draco, against Fiorentina, and against the engineers and the Queen. And I can have ships really, really close to the main field of battle. So, getting that space station is actually huge. Okay. Now, as it is, that space station, even if I had money, couldn't build anything. Because the first time you build a building, a shipyard, a factory, whatever, you can't use it that same turn. And the same rule actually applies to ships as well. And you'll notice I just undid everything because that's all I wanted to show you with Terca Lumerias. The next thing I want to show you is how to attack. So if I select my radar, I can attack Luthier pretty easily. I just move here, and I left-click it. Or I just forget that middle step, and I just left-click it. But you'll notice it's not immediately clear here what is happening. They're highlighted in yellow, then I click them, and my radar disappears, and Draco's radar disappears. It's not immediately clear what's happening. All I can say about that is this. My radar destroyed his radar. All of his ships ganged up to destroy my radar. The combat system is pretty complicated, so like all details, I recommend looking in the guide to see how exactly it works. Fortunately, though, there are things you can do to help yourself in combat. So I can produce a missile. And now, that missile, it's down here, it's in my trade system, okay? I can access it anywhere on my trade route. So if I take my ships here, look, I've got these buttons that say load missile. They are all connected to it. Now if I move my radar here, you'll see it no longer has that button. That's because it's off the trade route. But if I move it back up here, the button reappears. I have loaded the missile. It is no longer available because it's sitting there in the radar and you can see it in the tooltip. Now missiles that are just loaded and nothing else don't actually do anything. So the next thing I need to do is I need to prepare the missile for detonation. You can see it's now tipped in red on the tooltip. Preparing a missile for detonation, what that will do is it'll say, okay, the next time I am in combat with this ship, it's going to use that missile. So let's see what happens. If I attack these guys, his radar still dies, but mine survives. What a missile does is it causes your guy to attack from range, which means he can kill something. He can kill something once because he only has 1 missile, but nothing can kill him. Okay, that's what missiles do. Now, the other thing about missiles is they're needed for conquering planets. So I already demonstrated how to conquer Terca Lumerias, but Terca Lumerias is unique in that it doesn't have anything on it. It's unowned. Let's think about if I wanted to conquer Luthier instead. Well, first of all, I'd have to clear the enemy fleet. But, let's say I do that, and now I want to conquer Luthier. It turns out that I won't have that nice big fat conquer button on Luthier. It wouldn't be there. And that is because Luthier is developed. The populace resists me. So what I need to do first is I need to bomb Luthier. And I can't demonstrate that now because Luthier is in fact occupied. But what you do is you move a ship on it. The ship has to have an active missile, and then you get a bomb button. Clicking that will destroy a building. It will terrify the populace, and they will, abandon all allegiance to Draco, and then I'll be able to conquer it. So, the key of here should be that missiles are pretty much critical to going forward and conquering the world. And that brings me to another critical thing, which is trade routes. You already saw how I couldn't get that raider unless I was on the trade route. I couldn't get a missile to that raider, I mean. But you'll notice I don't exactly have too many trade routes. I have this main area, then I have a few going away, but if I wanted to get a missile over here, into the heart of the Engineers and the Queen territory, no way. So there is a way to get around that, and that is diplomacy. So if we look up here, we have space details, and I can click that to go to the diplomacy panel. And you see here I have a relationship with everyone. So it shows on the right their opinion of me, and here then is my ability to toggle my opinion of them. So what I can do is I can click here, and now I consider Fiorentina an ally. Or I can click here, and now I consider Draco an enemy. So the effects of these things mostly have to do with trade routes. When I make Fiorentina an ally, I am saying, hey, Fiorentina, you are now allowed to use my trade routes to transport your missiles. If I make Draco an enemy, what I am saying is I will actively try to stop Draco from getting stuff. Right now that doesn't do much, but if I was to have a ship, say, here, right next to Luthier, it would block that trade route as an enemy of Draco, and that would prevent Luthier from getting critical resupplies. So that's what the relation panel is. There are two other parts of the diplomacy, which you can just toggle up here, and it's resource trading and planet trading. This is pretty simple. You just select the planets you want, and then you click the player you want to give them to, but because I don't actually want to give half of my empire to Castillos, I'm just going to undo that. But that's useful if, you're involved in heavy diplomacy and it's I'll give you a planet if you give me 20 resources or something like that sort of thing. Okay. There's one more thing that I hope we have time for, which is talking about what the general does. So you'll notice that in a space with a general, there are these golden buttons. So once per turn, the general's ability is to give something a power-up. In the case of refineries, it means you get an extra one of that if you use the thing. In the case of factories or space stations, it means you can use it twice. So I can produce 2 missiles now in a turn instead of 1. The most interesting one, though, is in the case of ships. So if I empower a ship, you'll see it glows in white to demonstrate that it's empowered now. It gets what's called a preemptive strike. And a preemptive strike, although you can't really see it there, is super powerful. What it does is it lets the empowered ship attack twice. It gets an extra attack round before anyone else. And so, an empowered ship could destroy, an empowered raider could destroy 2 other raiders. The one critical thing about both missiles and power-ups is that you can only use them if you're the one attacking. So be sure to be the one attacking. Now that's about all I have time for here. For those of you creating empires, you'll see that the buttons are similar. You can build 7 ships, 1 general, 2 of each type. You can build a refinery on each planet. You can build 3 buildings on each planet. And I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, just ask me or read the manual. Thanks. Bye.